Hey, everybody, it's a Plant-Based Business Hour. I'm live from Egypt, COP27, on the second to the last day. I'm here with the Director of UN Affairs of ProVeg International, Raphael Podselver. He is going to break down with me what has gone on the last 13 days and what can we expect the outcome to be of COP27, which some people are calling hashtag Food COP27, because food systems discussions were finally on the agenda at COP. Took 26 COPs to get here. Finally on the agenda at COP, but was anything accomplished? Let's dive into it. Raphael, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your energy.
Oh, you're so wonderful. We have been working, Raphael and his team, Juliette, Sebastian, Nanine, have been working so incredibly hard. It has been incredibly difficult here. Tell me, first of all, what is COP27? Not everyone understands what the acronym is for.
Sure. So it stands for Conference of the Parties, and basically it's the climate change discussion, negotiations to make sure that we that we get to the Paris Agreement to limit climate change to 1.5, maximum 2 degrees. We all know that we're not on track to accomplish the Paris Agreement. So it's a very, very important event and a very important conference that features basically more than 190 countries coming together to try to push for harder commitments, to discuss on solutions. Today is actually Solutions Day also, so it's very interesting that we're talking probably about plant-based as a solution. And it is like a very important conference organized by the UNFCCC, and it's happening every year, and we're seeing slow progress, but some progress, so it's a very important event, yeah.
Yeah, so it's an extremely important event. You say 190 countries come together. Is it an equal playing field? Do some countries have more power than others? Why are some things on the table for negotiation and some topics are not?
So after each COP, you can see actually where the delegates are coming from. And of course, there is a disproportion between countries from the global majority and on the other side, countries from Europe or the US, etc., and countries from the North that have much more influence, of course, also because of the economical weight, because of course of the whole system, how it's made. But it is still an occasion for many countries to have a seat at the table and to also push for solutions, because the countries that will be the most impacted by climate change are clearly the countries from the South, from the global majority. So it's still a good occasion, but of course there is a disproportionate representation of countries from the North.
So there's some things that are shocking to me, and that is today, I believe it came out that they're not even sure if they're going to put a reduction of fossil fuels on the agenda for negotiation. Is that accurate? Have I understood that correctly?
So yeah, COP is not over. We still have a day. It will actually probably go in extra times, but in general, we've seen with fossil fuels, which seem to be a very obvious topic for many people, that it is still very, very complex for many countries. Agriculture and food is even more complex, and it just, as you said, made its entry within the space of the UNFCCC within the COP, but it is not on the agenda of negotiations. It's not we don't have a real plan to see how we can move towards more sustainable, resilient, plant-rich food systems. So it is very slow, but in general, we saw some progresses. I think, at the time of the Paris Agreement, we were on track to get more than 4 degrees Celsius on climate change. And now we're at more than 2 degrees, 2.4, 2.5. So we're making slow progress in commitments. But, this COP is supposed to be an implementation COP. We're talking not only about what we should do, but how we can implement it. And it's very, very slow. And I understand that when you're not familiar with those negotiations, it seems like nothing's happening, but things are happening slowly. And we're pushing, of course, to get food systems, plant-rich diets, alternative proteins on the agenda, because those are solutions to mitigate the climate crisis.
Indeed, we'll be having a press conference today at COP27, Raphael and myself, talking about investing in plant-based innovation and alternative proteins as a solution to mitigate climate change. Now, the Paris Accord was in 2016. We're in 2022, so that's 6 years of not really moving the needle, of having topics outlined on paper but not implementing. Why has it taken so long for that?
So yeah, it's even 2015. So it's even November 2015. So we have it's 7 years ago. We actually missed the COP with COVID in 2020. So there was also a lot of delay, disruptions in the processes. I think you have to understand there is it's a conference with like over 190 countries. So it's like very, very different interests, very different priorities. And we're still trying to find common ground, to stay at the table, to discuss, to talk with each other. And I think, when I talked with delegates this week, everybody was telling me like, okay, it's great because we finally eventually have like 4 different food pavilions. The FAO was also like there, and we had like a lot of exchanges. So I think, we really have like first to make sure that, delegates also integrate the fact that food systems are responsible for like 1/3 of total greenhouse gas emissions. And some delegates, having been so much focused on energy, transportation, and other topics, some delegates were like, oh, it's really like, I thought it was 20, etc. But like, yeah, it's animal agriculture is at 14.5 to 20, but food systems in general at over 30%. And the IPCC, every UN institution, every agency or like, scientific report tells us that we have to change fundamentally our food systems. So we're really trying to remind delegates that, we have like the evidence. Now we really need to implement it to make sure no one is left behind, that we have a just transition for farmers, for everyone, but we really need to take action. And so I think I'm pretty optimistic after after having been to COP in Katowice or in Madrid, where like literally nobody was really interested in talking with us. And we really had, to force almost people like to talk with us about climate change and connections with food systems. We see substantial progress on that. So this is really good. And now we have to make sure that we implement the right solutions, and alternative proteins in general, plant-based, etc., are part of those solutions, but they should be playing a prominent role in those discussions. And we're working very hard to get like a lot of discussions on food systems, but especially actions at the next COP in the UAE next year.
Yeah, wonderful. So you're rather optimistic, which is good news.
Yes, I'm very tired, but like I'm still optimistic, like that we, are moving somehow in the right direction. The thing is that we don't have much time. Climate change, every half degree, every like, it's really like, it has massive impacts on population, on livelihood. So like we have to make sure that really we move faster and that we really like implement the solutions that are recommended by the international panel, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, by the UN Environment Program, by the FAO. Everybody is telling us that we need to change fundamentally food systems, and that there is no way that we will achieve the Paris Agreement if we don't do something. So we really need to have concrete commitments by governments in investing in alternative proteins, in making sure that healthy diets and education play a role in schools, in having subsidies and taxation, like, adapted also like to the situation. And this is like things that take quite a lot of time because it's fundamental systemic change. But I think that, many governments are also realizing that there's a lot of potential here, that they could also benefit a lot from this. And I think, we're trying to really push for things to go a little bit faster, but it's a very complex process.
Yeah, I love what you say about alternative proteins, plant-based innovation playing a major role there. I would argue that we will not see implementation of plant-based innovation and alternative proteins unless we invest heavily in the sector. So it's going to take more than governments. It's actually going to take businesses, the private sector, individuals as well. Everybody hands on deck if we're going to see the change that we need in the time that we need it, which is a very short period of time. So it seems that our future is at the hands of these delegates. Who are these delegates? Who picks them? Where do they come from?
So they come from every country that is participating in the COP. There is like, representatives from the ministers of environments, the ministries of environments, of agriculture, of energy. Every country has like a different structure with its, governmental agencies, etc. But there is also, civil society, the private sector that is also getting involved. There are farmers, there's indigenous people. So like everyone is at the table. And this is a unique chance actually to get everyone at the table. And that's what we also try to do with our pavilion, Food for Climate, to have like the private sector talking with farmers, to have like, civil society talking with delegates, to have like really everyone at the table. And we really try to tackle very, very different topics, from plant-based innovation to gender to anything that is related like to food systems and climate change. And I think it was like a very, very interesting experience, even though we have one more day tomorrow. But I can already say that after those, 10, 12 days, I don't remember. It's been like very, very interesting. And we really had really good discussions, with many people from ministries to like farmers to everyone. So it's really, really exciting. Yeah.
I've had a couple of unique experiences here. I was speaking to a delegate from South Africa, and they asked me point blank at a climate summit, why would we need to reduce our meat intake? So there is a certain level of education that still needs to take place. And then I also think there's a mindset that needs to be shifted in addition to shifting the global food supply system. So I feel that a lot of people still see it as a sacrifice or giving up, or it's going to be too difficult, or their citizens won't like it, or it will mean sacrifice. But I think much of what the message that we have here at COP is that it will actually be better for farmers. Actually, it will be better for the planet. Actually, it will be better for your taste buds, and it will be better for your wallet when we replace the inefficient system that is animal agriculture. Hey, no shame. We all grew up eating meat. That system used to serve us well. It no longer serves us well. It's a bad business equation. It's ripping apart the planet. It's clearly bad for animals. It's bad for our health, our pandemic risk. But it's trying to shift that mindset that shifting away from meat to alternatives isn't a sacrifice. It's actually going to be better. Have you had any conversations where people are getting that?
Yes, yesterday I met actually with 4 women from Senegal that are like farming like organic farming in Senegal, and they explained me a lot of things also about how they themselves diversify their proteins and like the way they are farming, etc. So it was extremely enriching for me, like to talk with those 4 women, and we talked for more than an hour. They were also like mentioning directly the fact that we in the north, with our consumption in my country, over 80 kilograms of meat a year in France, they really also were like telling, you have to act, you have to do something. And I told them also like that I really admired like the way like they were also like tackling every aspect in the way they were farming and the way they were also discussing with people. So it was like very, very interesting for me. Of course, then I also talked with delegates, from the ministries or from, ministers like from different countries when we have the chance to. But this is something that I really enjoy to see also the perspective, also from, in this case, women from a country from the global majority that really already got it in a sense, because they are at the front line of climate change. They will be impacted. Their agricultural production will be massively impacted. So they really, like we're also saying, like that they were interested in diversifying their protein intake for food security purposes. So that was like very, very interesting. But yeah, I had like countless discussions with a few dozens and dozens of delegates. And yeah, sometimes it's a little bit shocking when you see people like from European countries still asking questions that are very obvious on like the impact that we have in the north with our food systems, with our over dependency on animal source proteins. It's still like still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, it can be frustrating, but also wonderful to feel that you're helping people connect the dots and make that long-lasting educational impact, as well as hopefully a transition in the global food supply system. So some of the topics that have been on the agenda here, or at least that Food for Climate Pavilion has been trying to get out, is, of course, just transition for farmers, shifting away to away from animal agriculture to alternative proteins, but also food waste has been a big topic here at the Climate Summit, as well as food security, which has been a big topic. And you're seeing a lot of people talk about farming techniques. So one of the great things about alternative proteins is, if you get away from monocropping, you see cropping legumes and beans are wonderful for the soil and regenerates the soil. So regenerative farming is getting a little bit of a buzz here. I'm not even sure what people think it is, but there's great things to be done with legumes.
Yes, absolutely. It's like we talk a lot about alternative proteins because it has like a huge potential to immediately mitigate the emissions coming from rich countries, to make it simple, but it's also like it also has a huge potential for countries that will be impacted by climate change, and for other countries like on the food security aspect. So it is like definitely something that is also getting a buzz, like regenerative and more sustainable farming too. But we still have also advocates of like industrial animal farming, etc., that are also present here. So we have to make sure that we also like really get the message that whether it's about climate change, environment, biodiversity, zoonoses, health, shifting away from like the excessive dependency on animal source product is one of the key solutions. So this is what we are telling every delegate that we meet, journalists and others, because it seems that we're still not getting like the 30% attention that food systems should have within a COP. We're still talking a lot about coal, about fossil fuels, which is good. It's very important to tackle those issues, but we really should have like food system much more integrated in the UNFCCC process.
Yeah, and we invest disproportionately in solutions like alternative energy and alternative vehicles, alternative transportation, when actually alternative transportation is much less than the emissions coming from animal agriculture. So we should be investing more in animal agriculture as a proportion of the solution, which is why Raphael says, hey, we should be getting 30% of the attention here, because food systems are responsible for 30%, even more, of the emissions. So, but we're not getting that kind of attention, but we are getting some attention. Tell me about the highs of this conference and the lows of this conference.
So I think the highs of this conference is really that we have like at least 4 different pavilions focusing on food system, food for climate, food systems pavilion. The FAO also had a pavilion. So this is really important because delegates spend a lot of time, of course, in meeting rooms. They're working extremely hard. I know many of them that are completely exhausted now. It's a very complex process again. When you have so many countries at the table, every word counts. Everything in a sentence is important. And we see it also in the Coronivia joint work on agriculture, which is the only kind of negotiations there is on agriculture. It is very complex to make progresses on that. I think so. It's a good thing that we really got more attention both from the media, from delegates, from the UN in general about food. We already had kind of a feeling that the next COP in the UAE would be a lot about food, but we really wanted things to get a little bit faster and to bring also food here in Sharm el Sheikh at COP27, because it's also an African COP where of course food security is so important. A continent with over 800, having over 800 million people in the world suffering from malnutrition. We should definitely also talk much more about food, both because of the importance on climate change, but also about the food security aspect. I think the lows, we've seen that we had quite a lot of challenges in general, getting the topic into negotiations. This is one thing. The catering also was a little bit a question, because there was very little, of course, options for vegetarians, vegans, or plant-based in general. But again, I think we're still in a very privileged position to be able to participate in this COP. But of course, it's it would be good to see a little bit more plant-based options at the next COP, because it also connects with delegates when what they eat. So it's very important for me to make sure also that next COP there will be a little bit more of a sustainable catering system in general.
Yeah, it's interesting how there seems to be a disconnect between shifting the global food supply system and the individual. So I've been hearing that individuals have said, coming out of Glasgow COP26, that they wanted better food. The last food at COP26 was too healthy, too focused on some plant-based options. So there was this pushback, and there has been pushback for several years, to have meat at a climate summits conference. So that, I think, is an odd disconnect.
So for us at ProVeg, we promote a reduction in dependency of animal source proteins. So our main problem is the fact that there's not enough plant-based foods. I think, of course, having this huge plate with beef every time that is in the middle of the catering is also a little bit problematic. I think it would have been good to also put the greenhouse gas emission of every dish that you put, as they did in Glasgow. Again, I know that it's been very challenging to organize this COP, also the security concerns and other aspects. So, I just hope that we're going to do better next time. And again, we're really pushing to get much more plant-based options on the menu, to get the greenhouse gas emission, and to have delegates also able to connect their plates also with the negotiations.
So a high for me is that this conversation is on the table, and I think that makes such an important impact, and I think the message is getting out. And whether or not food systems change gets to the negotiation list, I still feel that there's impact being made, and that you have 4 pavilions here shouting out every hour on the hour with a new topic about food systems change for 14 days straight. And it does have an impact. And there are some vegan options at catering. So these things start to make sense for people. I think my low is in walking around, I'll say 200 pavilions, 150, 200, 220?
I have no idea.
Okay, so many pavilions. In some of the island countries, I'm seeing not how do we change our current system. I'm seeing large posters that say, get ready, you will lose your crops, be prepared to move. So there is a portion of this conference that is already telling people, we will not be here to help you. Your fate has been sealed. And I feel that for the island nations, that message is coming across. What do you think?
I think, yeah, I mean, again, like many countries, most of the countries that will be like impacted massively by climate change, that will face massive challenges, because you will have like also like at 2 or 3 degrees, you will have like simply like places where you cannot live anymore, where you cannot grow food anymore, where you cannot like, it will be like very, very challenging. So I think that we're starting to understand the emergency also will the natural disasters, and like the fact that there will be happening more often and like more intense, and that it will be like very, very difficult for many regions in the world. I think we should also realize in Europe, in the US, that it will also have massive consequences for us. So like it's also something that there is still like, it seems, a disconnect. And you're right to mention the small island countries, because they are also at the forefront. But we will have like massive impact in the north too. So like it's going to have an economical cost, climate change, that is massive. So we need not only to adapt to climate change, but to mitigate it to the maximum. And this is like the message we're trying to bring with our pavilion, with ProVeg International in general, the fact that we need to take action now, and like take action, more than just simply like one plant-based option in canteens, but like what about having like, like much more plant-based options in canteens, and have default veg, for example, and other options. This is very, very important. And I'm happy also to see that youth is getting seems to be understanding the topic very well, because like they will be impacted they will be like impacted like the most. So it's really like something that is starting to make progress, but again, we need to go much faster.
Yes, we need to go much faster. Another slogan, if you will, that I'll note is Pakistan has a saying that is, whatever happens in Pakistan won't stay in Pakistan. And I thought that was quite clever, kind of riffing off that whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, referring to their natural disasters that then go on to impact the rest of us. So it's not enough for the rich countries to say, oh, that's happening to small island states, or that's happening only to Pakistan, but it's something for us all to understand. Okay, so this has been in Egypt, where things have gone a little differently. There are lots of protests outside. Glasgow had so many people in the streets rallying for food systems change. Egypt put the squash on that, so there hasn't been much in terms of protests.
No, of course, it's a very different context here, of course, and like it's very clear that civil society has to be very careful, of course, on many aspects. And yeah, of course, there was some protest actually inside the venue also from climate change activists. But however, yeah, of course, it's a very different context simply than Glasgow or Madrid or Katowice. But yeah, we're here to work like on food systems change, and I think we're like doing progress. So that's for me like very important.
Raphael, such a veteran. So as we look to COP28, which will be in Dubai, what are your predictions for next year's COP?
It will be a food COP. I think it will be a food COP. It will be a food COP, and we're going to talk a lot about food innovation, about just livestock transition, about how to get everyone involved in the discussion. And yeah, we're already working. We already met with some ministries from the UAE. I think they really get it. They're very happy also like to see that there is like interest in food, and yeah, I think it will be like a very important topic at next COP, because I've seen I've seen it grow since Katowice, and I think the UAE COP will definitely be a food COP.
Yeah, we will be there. So Plant-Based Business Hour will report from Dubai. So the food has been sort of so here. What have you been doing for your favorite snack every day?
I just I got like a lot of like bars, energy bars, and other things like from colleagues. Sometimes I manage to go to the canteen, like that is close to delegates room. There are still options. You can still have lentils, rice, vegetables. So yeah, I would say like the quality is actually pretty good. The problem is the fact that we don't have like enough plant-based options. That's been like underlined by many activists. Again, it's a very different context, and yeah, it's something that we'll be working on for the next COP to make sure we have like local traditional food from the region, but also a lot of plant-based food that is also like from the region, because there is like Mediterranean cuisine in general has like so many options, so much quality. So like it's of course like something we could work on getting something better next time also.
Yes, wonderful. I've been leaning on those Mediterranean options for myself. Okay, Raphael has to go back to meetings, folks. He's got to talk to delegates about shifting the global food supply system. Raphael, I want to thank you for all that you do. Thank you for going through these 14 by the end of tomorrow, very long days inside, lots of air conditioning, not the greatest air quality. So I want to thank you for working so hard, for always being there, for always representing ProVeg International. Shout out to you. Shout out to the entire team, Juliette, Nanine, and others at ProVeg International. Of course, Raphael, take us home. If you have one word of inspiration coming out of this COP, what would you like everyone to know? What would you like everyone to do?
I would like everyone to connect food with climate change, and I would also tell people in general to get out of the bubble. You talk with people that do not agree with you, accept discussion. It's not always black and white. There's many things that you need to be like, take into consideration when we talk with people. So I think it's very important for us to engage with everyone, to get everyone at the table. And I'm sure we are making substantial progress, but I'm sure we're going to make those progress faster in the future too.
Well, Raphael's doing his part, everybody. So now you know your marching orders. Go to it. Let me know what you're doing. I want to hear about it on LinkedIn. Come find me and let me know. Everybody, I will see you next week from Dubai, where I'm going to an alternatives investment conference so that I can get out of my bubble and talk about investing in alternative proteins in Dubai. Everybody, thank you for all you do. Let me know what you're up to. Raphael, you're fabulous. See you all next week. Bye from Egypt, everybody.